particular read from
Less than an
HSBC.
hour, we should be expecting that. Aussie dollar and equities, pretty much the things we're going to be keeping an eye on, and we'll bring it to you live as soon as they drop.
Well, superannuation advisors need to tailor their advice to clients according to a Generation report out today.
The SMSF Generations Report shows there's not such a typical super investor due to differing attitudes, priorities and lifestyle aspirations. So, how can the booming SMSF industry incorporate the generational divide into their advice efficiently? For that, so hopefully to answer those questions, we're joined by Andrea Slattery, CEO of Report, co-author SPAA, of course, the Professional Association of Australia. Andrea, look, thanks very much for coming in. We might get to the generational breakdown in just a minute.
Sure.
I wanted to get your thoughts. A lot of discussion at the moment about the booming nature of the self-managed super fund. Obviously, the move now from 9% to 12% compulsory super. Look, what sort of numbers are you seeing in terms of a migration or a take-up of people managing their own super?
Well, what we've seen, James, is a fairly consistent growth in SMSFs over the last 10 to 12 years. So there's been around about 2,500 to 2,700 opening every month during that time, and it's been most consistent all the way through. So what you're seeing is an exponential growth, a steady growth and a consistent growth that actually hasn't changed a lot. So when we're talking about large lots of people going, they might be going back to their SMSF. They may have already had one and their workplaces perhaps had another super, or they may have had one trotting alongside of it and they're continuing that, or they may have actually moved. And so there are those people that, as they get more information and more education, are actually choosing to do things themselves and have control and flexibility over how they do that.
Although that's almost a contrasting view, I know to you that the ASFA's Pauline Barmos has put out even just in the last couple of days, saying as more and more people realise the responsibilities and how onerous it can be to have a self-managed super fund, you actually might start to see that trend shift the other way and people go back to those pooled super funds.
Well, it's interesting because that's actually an anecdotal thing, that SMSFs are complex and onerous and time-consuming and difficult. This particular piece of research that we've just done with Macquarie, it's Macquarie SPAA research, has actually shown that more than 75% are comfortable and happy with what they're doing, and they're enjoying what they're doing, and they're easily able to manage it because they have what they call expert and specialist advice services. So when you're in the SMSF world, you can there's actually a number of people that you can use. So when it says self-managed super, it means you yourself are actually managing and controlling what's actually happening, and you can do as little or as much as you want. So you can have the accountant or the financial planner or the lawyer. You have to have the auditor every year, and you have to have the actuary at certain stages. So there's a number of people that get involved, and what this piece of research and what we know in the SMSF world is that it's not complex if you get the right advice. It's not complex if you've got the right information and that you actually understand what's going on. It's not for everybody, and that is perhaps something that needs to be stated. But it is something that it's not onerous, and it's actually something more and more people, as they are becoming more interested in where those 9 cents in every dollar are going, are actually moving towards.
There's an interesting bit of research or commentary from UBS suggesting that because of this growth that we are seeing and the growing size of the super pot, we're starting to see a lot of corporate and industry supers over the next 24 months likely to start offering self-managed super fund-like sort of capabilities. I mean, is that something you see? Because, I mean, if they're seeing people leave them, they're going to want to hold on to that, particularly as that pot grows. I mean, is there a concern or at least a realisation that things are going to get a little bit more competitive?
Well, I actually don't believe that, James. What you're actually seeing is you're seeing a sector, when you're talking about the industry funds, that are actually developing what they call SMSF-like opportunities. It's just the ability to be able to invest directly into a couple of shares or into some cash assets or near liquid assets. It's almost identical to a very simple retail fund. It's actually not an SMSF-like investment, and I think SMSF is actually a prudential term in the law. It actually says it's a trust. Every member has to be a trustee, every trustee has to be a member, you have to lodge a tax return every year. That's what an SMSF is. And I think it's really important that if people are talking about more flexibility, that's appropriate. But we need to know that if you're in an SMSF, you're actually talking about using trusted advice, expert and specialist advice, to actually manage the way in which you want to grow and have the opportunity. You've actually got a large range of assets, quite a large pool that you can choose from, and particularly if you're in a small business, you may even want your business real property in. So you've got different people that want to be in SMSFs, and you've got different reasons for people to want more flexibility.
And we're talking in quite general terms here.
Yes.
Something that comes out in the research is that it's really hard to see, a typical SMSF investor, because you've broken it down into generations and found they are quite different wants and needs. And
yes, they are.
Even down to asset allocation, they're doing things quite differently at the moment.
Yes, they are. So you've got the Gen Ys are really interesting because they actually want advice. They are looking for information, and they're texting, and they're on all of the internets and the
not getting advice off Twitter, are they? That's a worry.
But they're that sort of generation that's looking for a lot of information. The problem with a lot of information is whether or not it's trusted. And if you can trust it by using a trusted specialist or expert, and that's what came through in the research, that, like I said, if you've got somebody that can actually assist you with making a decision, then you can make a better decision about your future opportunities, and that's your future saving and your it's a long way from retirement from Gen Y.
In terms of taking advice, I note that you had, in terms of Generation X, that they're actually quite sceptical.
Yes, they are.
When it comes to advice, so that's maybe something that they're not so comfortable with.
Well, if you look at the kind of people within Gen X, they're the ones, if you look, the most important things to you, and the average is 31 when you're getting married and 33 when you're buying a house, those sorts of things. You're in your 30s when you're making most of the big decisions about your life. You've got a lot of things happening, and so you've got a lot of information that's flowing through and making a lot of decisions, life decisions about your professional pathways and all those sorts of things, and they impact on what you're actually doing. The beauty about an SMSF is that it actually is something that, depending on what profession you're in, whether you're a professional or you're a small business person, with 2,500 small businesses in Australia, there's 2 million self-employed. These are the sorts of people, executives, that actually are within it, and a lot of people have some understanding, and it's at those particular points in time whether or not they use their own knowledge, use their own sources of information and trusted advice, and whether or not they want to branch out. So branching out into financial advice that you're not familiar with, or branching out into something else, you're not probably going to do it when you're making other major decisions in your life.
Indeed. Look, Andrew, we've run out of time. Thanks very much for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me.
Andrea Slattery there. Now, a new app that transmits data using sound aims to simplify the way users share images and other files between smartphones.